This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so before going through, we will have a small recap of what we have already learned. So we have learned in forensic psychiatry about the lucid interval. We have known that lucid interval is of two types in forensic medicine, are two entities. One is lucid interval is seen in regional injuries in case of head injury cases, and then lucid interval, another lucid interval is seen in forensic psychiatry. And what is the difference between these two? Lucid interval, there is a period of consciousness between two periods of unconsciousness in relation to head injury. Whereas here, it is the period of sanity between two periods of insanity in case of lucid interval relation to the forensic psychiatry. So very important, lucid interval has been asked many times. So if the paper setter wants to, examiner wants to know, that he will give in relation to whatever. So he will mention, write about lucid interval in relation to the head injury, or he will say lucid interval in forensic psychiatry. So he will mention in particular what you have to write. So in relation to forensic psychiatry it is the period of sanity between two periods of insanity. And in this period, the individual can judge his acts and so his actions, and he becomes liable legally for his actions because he knows the implications of his actions. So that's why he uh, he is liable for punishment or whatever. And if he commits an offense, he cannot be completely held responsible because this is one thing where the doctor comes to play in order to know the compos mentis of the patient. So whether the person uh, is sound in his brain or not, where his orientation towards the time, space, and person, it is intact or not. So if it is intact, then he is fully responsible for his actions. If he is not intact, then he is not responsible. And some of the examples where this lucid interval is present in psychiatry is it can be seen in diseases like mania, melancholia, and then EDH. EDH stands for extrajudicial hemorrhage in head injuries. So lucid interval, you know, derived from Latin word lucidus, which means clear. It is a period of clarity of thought between two subsequent bounds of mental illness, or simply we can know it is a period of sanity between two periods of insanity, and most commonly seen in bipolar disorders. And in bipolar disorders, we have two entities. One is mania. Mania means a person is too excited, he is uncontrollable and too excited, and another entity is depression. So they are like two poles. In one end, the person will be at one point of time, the person is very excited, very highly active. At another point, the person is very depressed, low in moods, and quiet, sitting at a corner. So these kind of behaviors are seen in a condition called bipolar disorder. And then between the maniac attacks, the person, the lucid interval, has a clear clarity of thought. So if a person commits crime in the maniac phase, where he's excited, he's uncontrolled, he doesn't know the implications of his actions, then he's not liable for his crime. Suppose if he commits a crime during the clarity of thought, during the depressive phase, during a phase where he is in a normal state, then he is liable for his thing. So lucid interval stands very important in the court of law to determine whether he is in which phase of the illness. And we also know that it is also seen in head injuries, where by definition it is a period of consciousness between two periods of unconsciousness. So we have seen this diagram. You can see there is a maniac phase between A and B, and C and D is a maniac phase, and then B to C is the depressive phase, which is known as the lucid interval. What is the medical legal importance? We have known the person is responsible for all his criminal and civil acts done during the lucid interval. So because there is clarity of thought, he knows the orientation of time, space, and person, and then there is compos mentis, and then he knows the implications of his actions. So he is fully responsible during the lucid interval. So, for example, sir, he can make a will during the lucid interval, entering into a contract, he can do it during the lucid interval, or committing a murder, he is fully responsible if he is involved in a murder. And we have known some of the differences between head injury and insanity, the lucid intervals of head injuries and insanity. In head injury, there is always an history of head injury, whereas in case of insanity, there is history of mental diseases. In head injury, the lucid interval is preceded by the concussion of the brain, whereas in insanity, there is no insanity. Symptoms of insanity will be more. In head injuries, lucid interval is followed by a phase of cerebral compression, whereas the recurrence of symptoms of insanity is there in insanity. And a number of episodes in head injury, there is only one episode. There is only one lucid interval can be seen only once for each head injury. In case of insanity, in mental disorders, the person can have recurrence. So he can come into the mania, then depression, again mania, then depression, again mania, then depression. So this kind of recurrence can be seen in mental diseases and insanity, whereas in case of head injury, there is only once. In delirium, we have seen it is a state of disturbed consciousness, orientation, and then critical faculties which are blunted, and thought contents are also irrelevant. You know this delirium derived from Lachnau, which is off track or out of the furrow, and it is a severe neuropsychiatric syndrome in which there is these four aspects. Deliriums are always acute onset, they are fluctuating course, and there is attentional deficits, and there is reduced clarity of awareness of the environment. The fourth one is very, very important. He doesn't have the clarity of awareness. So acute onset, fluctuating course, attentional deficits, and then reduced clarity of awareness of the environment. So most common can be seen in hospital settings and mostly in ICU patients. And most common cause of this delirium is temperature. Increased temperature, mostly CNS infections, can have a disturbed, confused mind. Head trauma can lead to delirium, and then toxic substances like datura can cause delirium. And these are the 5 features of delirium. One is there is clouding of consciousness, very important. Clouding of consciousness, thereby leading to decreased awareness of surrounding, thereby decreased ability to respond to environmental stimuli. So if you ask him where he is, even if he is in hospital, he will say, I am in home. So the awareness of the surrounding is not present, it is lost. So there is clouding of consciousness. And then there is disorientation, most commonly in time, then in space, and usually later in person. So he will say, if suppose if it is a night time, you ask him that he will say that it is a morning time. So most common disorientation is, first of all, it is for the time, and then as the person deteriorates, he will not able to tell in which place he was there, and then as the time goes on, still he is delirium symptoms are still further degraded, then he cannot identify his own family members. So disorientation, there is decreased attention span, there is distractibility, and then there are illusions and hallucinations, which are most common hallucinations are visual. There is perception deficiencies, and then impairment of memories. So new memories are impaired, whereas old memories are still present. He cannot able to remember what happened before the fever, before the incidents. He cannot recall the incident before when he is there or what he is doing before the incident. He cannot recall, but he can recall the previous date of births, marriage dates, or even so old memory is intact, but the new memory is lost. So I think what is the medical legal importance is a person may become impulsive, violent, and may commit homicidal, suicidal tendencies. If we not control these delirium symptoms, and the person is delirium is not responsible for his acts. Very, very important. So a person who is in delirium, he cannot make a will, he cannot be responsible for his crime. And we also, one more thing is, we know delirium tremors is one entity we have seen where it is there in alcoholics, where the person will feel as if the ants or sand-like feeling under the skin, delirium tremors, and then he will have a little bit shaking and shaking of fingers and tremors thing. And then we can also see in some cocaine bug where there is excessive chronic use of cocaine, drug abuse. We can also see this kind of delirium symptoms. So this is a short review of what we have seen previously. Then today we'll see about the difference between neurosis and psychosis. So we'll see for about few minutes and then so neurosis. What is neurosis and what is psychosis? Neurosis is a Greek word derived from neuron, which is known as nerve, and osis means disease. So nerve disease. Neurosis means nerve disease. It is a neurosis is otherwise called as psychoneurosis. It is otherwise called as neurotic disorder. Neurosis means it is a functional mental disorder involving distress, but not delusions or hallucinations. So neurosis is a functional disorder. Remember that. It is a functional disorder. It is not an organic disorder. It is a functional disorder, functional mental disorder involving distress. The patient does not, in neurosis, the patient does not lose touch with reality as it happens in the psychosis, or his behavior is not outside the socially acceptable norms. These 2 points are very, very important to differentiate between the neurosis and psychosis. In neurosis, it is a functional mental disorder involved in a distressful situations, and the patient does not lose touch with reality, and then his behavior is not outside socially acceptable norms. So he doesn't lose touch with reality, and his behavior is not outside socially acceptable norms. So a person suffering from neurosis is known as neurotic person. What is psychosis? Psychosis, again, it is derived from Greek word psyche, means mind, osis means disease. So psychosis is an abnormal condition of the mind when there is a loss of contact with reality. So psychosis is a serious problem than neurosis, because in neurosis there is only functional mental illness. It is only functional. There is no real problem. It is not organic problem. Here there is an organic problem. There is an abnormal condition of the brain in which there is loss of contact with reality, where in neurosis there is no loss of contact with reality and behavior is within the acceptable norms of the society. And the people suffering from psychosis are described as psychotic person. So these are the difference between psychosis and neurosis. So between these two, it is more severe means it is definitely psychosis, because psychosis is an abnormal condition of the brain. So it has an organic problem. It has some severity of the brain is there. Severe problem is there. Whereas in neurosis, it is only a functional thing. So, and then the touch with reality is lost in case of psychosis. the person will not lose touch with the surrounding environment in case of neurosis. In the normal social functioning will be deteriorating in case of psychosis, whereas the normal social functioning is not deteriorate in case of neurosis. And then this is very important, fourth point, empathy. What is empathy means? It is the capacity to share the sadness or happiness of the other person. Empathy. It is the capacity to share the sadness or happiness of the another person is known as empathy. This empathy is absent in psychosis, where it is present in neurosis. Very, very important. Empathy is absent in psychosis and whereas it's present in neurosis. Insight means it is the power of acute observation and deduction. Insight is absent in psychosis, whereas it is present in neurosis. Very important. So between difference between a psychosis and neurosis, when you will, because in any psychiatric ward or psychiatric OP, the psychiatrist has to differentiate between these two, whether he is a psychotic and neurotic. Who is a psychopath? A psychopath is characterized by an abnormal lack of empathy, lack of conscience, and then amoral conduct, masked by an ability to appear perfectly normal outward. So here a psychopath is a person who is normal outside, but he will be going on killing the people. He will be going on raping the person. So a psychopath is a person who is absolutely normal, but he is going on causing trouble to the society, and he doesn't have an empathy. There is lack of empathy, there is a lack of consciousness, and then he has immoral conduct. The conduct is not good. So very, very important. Who is a psychopath killer? So these are the symptoms of psychopath killer. You have seen some of the things where some people are using the needles. In previously, psychopath killers are there where during the times of HIV/AIDS, which is most prevalent nowadays, it has been very less. But previously, I would say 5 years back. So this is a very serious condition. So these psychopaths who are having the HIV, they used to use the needles and then pick someone on their way, or even some of the malls or some of the theaters. So they lack empathy, they lack the conscious, the conduct is not good, but it is masked completely by the outside. He will be perfectly normal. So a psychopath will have very high IQ, but typically has a very low EQ. EQ is emotional intelligence. The person will have very high IQ. IQ is intelligent quotient. So he is never attached to anyone or anything. He feels no regret and no remorse after committing an illegal act. And the difference between a psychopathic killer and a psychotic killer is that while a former, means the psychopathic killer, is aware of his actions, whereas the latter is not. So the psychopathic killer knows that what he is committing is wrong, but still he commits it because he doesn't have any empathy. There is no remorse, there is no regret. Whereas a psychotic killer, he doesn't know the awareness of his actions. So McNaughton's rule would absolve a psychotic killer but not a psychopathic killer. So because McNaughton's rule is nothing but a rule under section 84. We will see in the on the subsequent slides where it is a law which is seen by the court of justice in order to punish anyone with a psychiatric illness or not. So it is a rule that makes a person mentally stable for his action or not. So or when the person, his mental condition is good or bad at the time of crime, so that he can get this benefit of McNaughton's rule, where if the mental condition is bad or if he's not able to know his actions, then he will be relieved. If he is good, his comportment is good, then he will be punished. So McNaughton's rule deals with that kind of entity. So we will see in detail in the subsequent thing. So by now, so psychopathic killer and psychotic killer. Psychopathic killer, he knows what he is doing, whereas psychotic killer, he doesn't know what he is doing. So these are some of the IQs, classification of IQ. IQs means intelligent quotient. How do we calculate IQ is mental age divided by chronological age into 100. We can calculate IQ of any person by dividing the mental age of the person by chronological age into 100. Mental age is nothing but what is this means. Suppose you can see if a mentally retarded person is there, even though he is 40 years, but his behavior is only as if the person is of 5 years age. His behavior is in such a way that a 5 years child will behave in that way. So his mental, even though his chronological age is 40 years, his mentality, or he has not grown in brain, his mentality is as if the person is of the age of 5 years. So in that case, 5 will be the mental age and 40 will be chronological age into 100. So in this way, we will calculate what is the IQ of any person. So what is the classification of this IQ? We can see normally in average or normal average intelligence is about 90 to 110 IQ. So for everyone, most of the people, most of the 115 class, so the normal intelligence will be 90 to 110. If the person is super intelligence, then the IQ will be about 110 to 120. And then if he is very super intelligent, the IQ will be 120 to 140. And the person we call it genius. You know, Einstein, we call him as a genius. And also in India, we call Abdul Kalam as a genius. So rocket scientist. So they are the people who have IQ range of more than 140 or over. So genius or near genius, the IQ is 140 or over. Very super intelligence 120 to 140, super intelligence 110 to 120, and then normal intelligence is 90 to 110. So this is the classification for the mental illness or mental disorders or mental retardation. So we have the motor classification is divided into mild, moderate, severe, and profound mental retardation. Whereas in the older classification, we have
No.
idiot, imbecile, moron, borderline deficient. So these are the some of the things the older classification is used, because the words are not good to use, so they have changed it into mild, moderate, severe, and profound mental retardation. So you can see here, if the IQ is less than 20, I told you we have known that normal IQ of the normal intelligence is about 90 to 110. Suppose if it is less than 20, then the person is profoundly retarded or profound mental retardation is present. In older classification, we named it as idiot. He is an idiot. If a person has a profound mental retardation in older classification, it is idiot. And what is the mental age of that person is less than 3 years. Even though the person may be about 40 years, 50 years, or 30 years, his mental age, his behavior is only as if a child of below 3 years. So he is known as an idiot or profound mental retardation. If suppose if the IQ is about 20 to 34, we label it as severe mental retardation, and then we call it as in older classification as imbecile, and the mental age is about 4 to 7 years. So the person behaves as if he is of 4 to 7 years age child. And then we have moderate mental retardation if the IQ is about 35 to 49, and we have mild mental retardation if the IQ is about 50 to 69. And then in mild mental retardation, the older classification we call them moron, and the mental age is about 8 to 50. So these are the very important Viva questions. So the examiners can ask, who is a moron? So we have to tell what is his IQ. So a moron is a person whose IQ is about 50 to 69. And then according to the modern classification, he is having a mild mental retardation. And his mental age is about 8 to 15 years. Whereas who is an imbecile? Imbecile is in the range of 20 to 49, and then he is under moderate to severe mental retardation. An idiot is a person who has less than 20 IQ. And then we have another classification like borderline deficient, where the IQ is about 70 to 80, and the mental age of the person is greater than 15 years. So these are the some of the classification of the. We will finish this classification. No need to by heart all these. There are 22 classes in this classification of mental illnesses. So it is classified according to DSM-5. What is DSM-5 means? Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, which is published in 2013 by American Psychiatric Association. So classification of mental illnesses is based on according to the DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So they have classified all these mental illnesses into about 22 classes. So I will just go through the 22 classes. No need to by heart all these 22 classes, but you should know what are the names or what are the classification and what are the headings that are there in a classification. So there is neurodevelopmental disorders, schizophrenic spectrum and other psychotic disorders, bipolar and related disorders, depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive and related disorders, trauma and stressor related disorders, dissociative disorders, somatic symptoms and related disorders, feeding and eating disorders, elimination disorders, sleep and wake cycle disorders, sexual dysfunctions, gender dysphoria, disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders, substance related and addictive disorders, neurocognitive disorders, personality disorders, paraphilic disorder, other mental disorders, and then medication induced movement disorders and other adverse effects of disorders, other adverse effects of the medication disorders, and then other conditions that may not be focused on any clinical attention, which doesn't fit into these 21 classes. So this is how the DSM-5 has classified into different aspects of all the mental disorders. You need not learn all these things, but you should know what are the terminologies and what we have. So we will close here because the next class is going to come. So in next class we will continue. If anybody is having any doubt, we can raise, can ask. Otherwise, we will close. Okay then. No questions, means we'll leave. Thank you. Thank you for joining. We will continue in the next class.